Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Chicken Run from 2000. This is Aardman's first animated feature. They'd had a bunch of Wallace and Gromit shorts, but this was the first one, and I think it started the studio off with a boom, basically. It is still the highest grossing stop-motion animated film, is the only stop-motion film in its initial run, at least, to make over $100 million in America. It was a big deal at the time in the summer of 2000, and I think a lot of what makes this movie special and different and why this was such a big hit is because it's actually pretty different than most animated films, and this animation, even though 99 was a great year, Disney was sort of down, DreamWorks wasn't where it was gonna be, and I think Aardman got in there right before Shrek and, Monsters Inc. and we found out who Pete Docter was and all that stuff. They were able to come in and kind of hit the cultural zeitgeist. But I think it's also because this, unlike a lot of children's animated films that they've done, like Shaun the Sheep or the sequel Farmageddon, in this it's like this is pretty much The Great Escape or Stalag 17, but with chickens. It's not a kids movie that references those movies. I mean, it does those things, but it is also structurally one of those movies. Almost similar to a film that came out 2 years before, Bug's Life with Seven Samurai, but I think this is more extreme where they're using, iconography, where they're using the sets, where it very much feels structurally like one of those movies. This is pretty much one of those World War II escape from a prison camp movies, either that or Hogan's Heroes, if you wanted me to say that. It's like that, but it is a fun animated film, which was pretty different. I thought when I was watching, I was like, this doesn't feel like Shaun the Sheep. It doesn't even feel like the time period. It feels like a weird, different thing with Chicken Run, which I think is probably why it has such a revered place, because it does feel like a World War II movie, like the ones it's borrowing from. And probably there's other prisoner of war, World War II escape movies that I can't think of that this film was influenced by. But you can tell all throughout it. It's kind of like if I was... I kind of honestly want to watch The Great Escape and Stalag 17 and then rewatch Chicken Run and see how much it... Almost similar to a DreamWorks film, The Road to El Dorado was with the road movies with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. I think that's actually a perfect example, even though I know they weren't, probably even talking to one another the way DreamWorks was worked out at the time. But Chicken Run was a film that the summer it came out, it was a weak summer, and this was a great movie, and it became everything to both animation people, but more so to film people who needed something to latch on to. Let me tell you, this was the movie we were all obsessed with that summer, because it was a bunch of bullshit, basically. It was not a good 2000 does have some classics in it, but there was a lot of, it was a drought, especially after 99, and Chicken Run came in and was kind of like the grand hero of them all, almost to helping create best animated feature, but almost its legacy and its trivia can kind of overwhelm it. But I still think this is a really solid movie, and it shows the expertise of filmmaking between this is co-directed from Nick Park and Peter Lord, and how great they are as filmmakers, how smart they are, how well they understand structure, but how well they know how to tell a story. I've seen a complaint some of the things in this feel obvious through foreshadowing and stuff like that. I don't think Aardman's known for its subtlety. That's not a thing I go to them for, so I kept seeing that complaint. That doesn't bother me. I've seen these plot lines done a million times in a million different movies. I don't need to be blown away by how they reveal that the rooster kind of isn't who he says he is or whatever. I thought that would come up eventually, don't worry. It's more like how they did it is always the thing, and how they made and got to those reels and got to those things, and how they did it with fucking chickens is how this movie became, I think, such a classic, and why it is so good, because they were able to reinvent this genre, reinvent this type of movie, but do it in their own Aardman way. And you kind of you can't leave this movie and not think they're really skilled, amazing filmmakers who know how to grab an audience at the same time. Chicken Run is about a chicken farm, and this one chicken, Ginger, who is always trying to escape. They're constantly producing eggs, and then the farm sells the eggs. But then the wife of the guy, Mr. Tweedy, Mrs. Tweedy, decides to make their farm into an automated kind of chicken pie farm instead of just eggs. So they're going to kill the chickens rather than take all their eggs and stuff and then kill them, and make it, more profitable and things like that. And they very much all want to escape, so they are not killed in this evil machine, which sort of that comes up later, but it's a simplified plot. And then suddenly a rooster flies overhead, voiced by Mel Gibson, and he is going to hopefully get them out or fly them over as they try to find a way to make their great escape. Ha ha ho ho. The summer this came out was the summer of 2000. I was about 16, 17. And yeah, this was a movie that I remember seeing and going shocked at how, not too shocked that it was good. Everyone knew Wallace and Gromit was great at the time, but it really was like, I think I started my summer off with watching Mission Impossible and being so disappointed in John Woo, and I kind of needed something as a young filmgoer, especially like I was so spoiled by 99 and like keeping up with those movies at the beginning of 2000. Seeing the rest of 2000 was disappointing, and this was like this breath of fresh air. It was a different kind of movie. You didn't really get stop motion features. Like I think in the 90s we got Nightmare Before Christmas, James the Giant Peach, and then this. So it'd been like 4 years, and it was a different studio, and it was like a new thing. I specifically remember a film friend of mine calling me, because I saw this at the Senator Theater, which is a great theater. I do not have the Take a Step. I actually did look. I don't have that. I don't know why I didn't keep that Take a Step. I have like every other one but Chicken Run. Big regret. But I saw the Senator, which is a great Art Deco huge theater in Baltimore, and I remember during its last show I had a friend who was not particularly into animation, not to call him out or something, calling me and saying like, Jim, we have to get to the final Chicken Run show at the Senator. And I'm not really calling him out because I knew a bunch of people who went to that last showing and were like, I'm going to the last show of Chicken Run at the Senator. I mean, it's such a great, it was like the best theater in town. It still is the best theater in town in Baltimore. They went to see like the last great movie. Like that's how big it was. It was like Star Wars or something. It just took over. I remember all this discussion on it, and it really felt like this different thing. And I think we're all like happy, like, oh man, the future of DreamWorks, they're going to work with Aardman forever. It's going to be wonderful. I think the reception and the goodwill that everyone had for Chicken Run is what pushed it so much to being considered for Best Picture. It did not get a nomination that angered Jeffrey Katzenberg so much. That is actually what got him to petition heavily to make Best Animated Feature, and did the next year. So I think Chicken Run's a lot of evidence that, it was obviously like one of the best movies of the year. It was animated. Animated films were not getting nominated. Had it been nominated, it would have been, to this day, there has not been a stop motion animated feature to be nominated for Best Picture. Only Beauty and the Beast, only traditionally animated one. So it would have been a huge momentous occasion. But, I guess Aaron Brockovich and Traffic and Crouching Tiger, which are all good movies. So I think Chocolat was in there. Was Chocolat in there? I think the failure of people recognizing Chicken Run properly is why we have Best Animated Feature today. And that kind of shows you how good this movie was, that not only people really liked it, but were so angry at its snub that they made a big deal out of it. Aardman knew they wanted to make features. They went to various different studios. They went to DreamWorks, and I've always found it interesting. DreamWorks started with traditional animation, stop motion animation, and CG animation. Like that's how they started. No other animation studios ever started that way. Of course, with the success of Shrek, they eventually just got rid of those other two, I guess. They were like, let's get out of here. And Aardman's deal with DreamWorks ended in 2006. I have to hand it to them. I think that and Jeffrey Katzenberg, that is insanely ambitious. And even I don't think Disney fully was on that until like way after them. I don't think there's ever been a studio since that's done it that way. Like I was saying before, I think so much of this is a simplified version of that kind of a film, and I don't think they really, I haven't seen Chicken Run 2 yet, but Aardman doesn't really make animated films like this, and most animated films that are even influenced by other film genre don't adhere so much to the genre. They do kind of bring it down to like just the essentials in this, very meat and potatoes about the characters, because it's not like The Great Escape where you know each of them and stuff. They have like very much like, you have the one who's like Brainy, you have the one who's a World War II vet, you have the one who's fatter, the, you know, Ginger, who's kind of the main character. But it sort of, I think it very much works, and works in a way that you kind of need it to work, because at the end, where like I was like really into it at the end. I knew who everyone was, all those things were earned, you got everything immediately. It's like almost like trying to be sort of like Baby's First The Great Escape, but it's knowing why it's doing that. It's not just doing it because they're like, oh, we can't sell it any other way. They're probably like, okay, well, if we're going to tell this story, you know, like I think I've said this about all ensemble, like big ensemble things, like certain characters get focused on more because otherwise it would become like so unwieldy and like almost impossible to manage, and they manage it like perfectly and correctly to such a degree it is pretty insane, like how well, you know, you might feel like these are two-dimensional characters, but they're two-dimensional characters because they can't spend enough time on them. And then when they do spend more time with them, you do learn more, but it's like using that surface level to like make you understand as a storyteller. It's like the opening of this film is Ginger constantly trying to escape. So you understand Ginger wants to get out more than anybody. Ginger is the one who wants to get out more than any other character. You 100% get that. And I think that is Aardman perfectly, because they're like, we're not going to waste moments as like, okay, you get to chickens, this is a prison, you got that, cool, okay, she's getting out of the farm constantly, she doesn't want to be here, okay, you got that about her, and it just like keeps building and building and building, and then when you get to this epic, amazing, kind of wonderful climax, you get all of the stakes, you get all of everyone, and you don't really even have to think about it. It just feels so natural, and that shows like how great of Peter Lord and Nick Park are as storytellers and animators. Frankly, I think this is a great movie. I don't know, it definitely gets better as it goes along, because I think at the beginning I'm always like, I know what it's doing, but I'm like, oh, okay, and then like by the end I'm like so into it. I don't know, I've noticed that anytime I watch this movie I'm like not as into it at the beginning for whatever reason, even though I'm like, I feel like it's efficiently building something here. Actually, at the time, I know Mel Gibson, who did do a lot of press for it, which seemed cool at the time, but he's Mel Gibson. But the main thing for me was Julia Swahala, I think. She's Safion, absolutely fabulous. Like, to me, at the time, I watched a lot of AbFab, and I had sort of a crush on her. Not the actress, not the chicken. People always think I mean the chicken. I don't mean the chicken. I mean the actress from AbFab. Crush on her, you know, she was kind of the star for me. It was like a big deal they got Mel Gibson, but he was, you know, although I will say I do remember him promoting it and stuff like that. I think this had a thing with Burger King, and I remember people kept laughing at it said the words would mess up in the ad. Instead of saying eat a Whopper, it said eat a chopper, and everyone told me that was British slang for dick, but I've never heard, like, married to a British woman, you'd think I would know. I've never heard anyone use that term, so I don't know if that's you know what I'm thinking about? That's not correct, probably. This was the kind of big savior of cinema of that summer. I think that's sort of been erased from people, or maybe it's just like how I remember Chicken Run at the time. And I was like getting into filmmaking, and I just thought this was like the coolest thing in the world at the time. I know this is considered the year of Soderbergh and Crouching Tiger and probably some other movies maybe, but like this was the event of the summer for me. And I was just so into it. And watching it with my kids, I was like, this is a really cool movie. It does not move like a kid's movie now. It feels like almost 30, like 10 years older than it really is, and like it adhering to the Stalag 17 and Great Escape stuff. And I think they'd come out of the chicken and it says 17, so haha. But the reason why those movies, the Great Escape never sort of goes away, live on, is because they're great movies and they're really good playing under your expectations and playing with you as an audience and having your great ending. And I think like certain movies, if you leave on a high, you will remember it more fondly and you will tell people about it. And I think A Chicken Run has, the ending's just so good. And I like the whole like idea of like, you know, it's the stakes are escalating, like the idea of the farm's getting worse, the situation's getting worse, the idea of the new person who's sort of a grifter but sort of let the grift happen, I guess you could say. I like all that about it, but I also like how well Aardman animated this. I love the kind of flow of this. I'm not sure how they animated it specifically. It just felt like it still feels kind of beautiful and momentous how they did it, and like seeing the way they made the characters and how, I don't know, simple the design was and how perfect they were doing those sort of things. I think there is a specific reason this was such a hit, is because I think it is so different, and I think it took people by surprise. And it still takes me by surprise. Rewatching it, it took me back to being a teenager and seeing this film for the first time and being wowed by it. This was kind of like the cool filmmaking thing in the mound of explosion-y CG, you know, what they say about summer movie things. This felt like tactile and real and felt like a classic Hollywood genre and stuff like that. It's like, in some ways, this is classic Hollywood. In other ways, it feels very British and homey, and in other ways, it feels like the greatest filmmaking experiment of all time. Like, it is just like all those things at once, and it felt so cool when this came, like, for real. I'm sort of whatever. It felt so cool that this like broke through at the time. I was like, awesome, Aardman's gonna be a thing. It'll be like, there's Pixar, there's Disney, there's Aardman, and it didn't work out. But it's like that, like, enthusiasm of it. Watching this, and even like I watched Ebert's review and stuff, it reminded me of that time period. So I'm always thinking of Chicken Run with that. But when we were watching it with my kids, I was like, there is a reason this movie works so well for some people. It is very different. It kind of like sticks out in your mind, you know. I will always look back on this film fondly, but I think you look back on it fondly because it is a solid movie with solid filmmaking, made by some of the most innovative stop motion animators of all time, really. Nick Park and Peter Lord are probably some of the, if not the greatest stop motion animators of all time, and putting this out and like really wanting to sort of make a statement. And they made an entirely different movie even than they've made before. I don't think they ever made a movie like Chicken Run ever again, and I don't think any other animation studio could have made this. It is wholly unique, merging everything that works well about them. Is like a kind of homey Britishness, smart economical filmmaking, just innovative stop motion that I think in a lot of ways you could take for granted. But when I was watching this one, even if I do take it for granted at the beginning, when it pays off at the end, I'm so glad I took it in the first place. And I think Aardman really made an achievement with this one. This is not one that we should sleep on maybe as much as we did, maybe as much as we have. Maybe we should bring this up more. But it always takes me back at a time when, you know, maybe mainstream Hollywood felt a little more dire to me at the time as a kid, and this kind of like gave me hope that, you know, some cool movies could come out, and I think with this one really did. So if you've seen Chicken Run and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.